Hey, I'm here with a guide on Anji Mito. I'll try to rapid fire these points because your time is valuable and mine isn't. You can trust my opinion. I didn't play Guilty Gear XX Accent Core plus Art plus 10 Reload Revelator Central Fiction 5, so I'm not biased by how Anji Mito plays in this prior version. This guide is for his try version and that alone. I could provide more evidence on why you should trust my opinion, but you don't fucking care, so let's get on with this. This video originally was going to be one entire thing, but I realized it started becoming 30 minutes long even with me rapid firing information. This will be a small series as a result, and this particular video will cover Anji's playstyle and his normal attacks. The next one will cover his specials, supers, and some gameplay goals. This video is not about how good or bad Anji is. That's a rabbit hole of a discussion, and I really do not want to open that can of worms. Character strength is liable to change with tech development and patches, so it's not compelling to talk about that shit other than to vent about your losses. Anyways, let's begin. Part 1. What does Anji play like and what are his strengths and weaknesses? Anji plays like he looks, a beautiful asshole. Anji is a jack of all trades character with heavy emphasis on reading your opponents. Anji's main gimmick are his guard points. With proper prediction, he can catch a variety of attacks and go for punishes that no other characters can do. Anji is also trying to read how his opponents behave in a neutral game, as he has tools to check the opponents at different positions for powerful rewards. He has some pretty strong pressure options as well that provide strong rewards if you can properly read your opponent's defensive habits. Anji does have some major weaknesses. Because he's very focused on reads, if your prediction is ever off, you're often put in dangerous positions where you could just die. If you can't read your opponents to begin with, you're generally forced to play a somewhat subpar neutral game, as his attacks are generally just okay rather than being good. He has workable normals, but they aren't amazing by any means. His generally slow movement is also kinda troublesome. Anji is also reliant on knowledge checks. If the opponent shows that they can answer certain things consistently, then Anji suffers more so than many other characters. You have to be adaptive and be able to play with a variety of tools or lack of tools in some situations. I recommend Anji to players who are trying to predict their opponents but doesn't wish to be labeled as a dirty grappler player. I also recommend Anji if you like strong Japanese man chest. But most importantly of all, Anji is fun and has a good degree of gameplay expression. You know, when you're winning, of course. Part 2. Utilizing his normals. Normal attacks are the core of Guilty Gear strides, so knowing the purpose of them is vital. I'm not going to go heavy into frame data, but rather more so of the general use cases of these normals. Frame data can change, but the true purpose of the move is forever. That's actually not true. I'm also going to use the numpad notation to refer to these normals. If you don't know what that is, learn it. If you don't want to learn it, then I recommend you to play Raid Shadow Legends instead. Actually, I'm not even sponsored by them. Anyways, let's begin. 5P is a general check. With fast startup and fast recovery, it's just good to check whatever your opponent is doing, be it on reaction or not. Mei does Dolphin, 5P says fuck you. 5P can also anti-air in some situations. Some enemies attack extend their hurt box before their hitbox appears. 5P can potentially stuff it. Because it's fast, it's harder than most normals to whiff punish. 2P is similar to 5P. 2P is your most mashable normal on defense. If your opponent gets too greedy with the pressure, 2P checks them well. 2P and 5P can cancel to Anji's 6P, but you won't often hit it unless the opponent is standing just directly next to you. The better and more useful cancel route is 6H. 2P into 6H can catch people's mashing. It also advances you forward as well. 2P to 6H does lose to the opponent's backdash if they're far away enough, but you can cancel 2P into a semi-charged fusion to catch that. Remember what I said about reads, this is the start of that. 6P, like all 6Ps in this game so far, is an anti-air. Anji's 6P actually looks quite like an anti-air itself and has a pretty far angle upwards. The main thing that makes this anti-air is that Anji has head invulnerability on startup, so even if a move looks like it's just smacked a smirk up Anji's stupid face, it will whiff. As a result of the head invulnerability, Anji's 6P can even beat some interesting things that aren't even seen as air moves, such as other characters' far slashes or some moves with generally high hitboxes that also extends their hurt boxes, such as Giovanna's drill kick for one example. 6P is a pretty important anti-air and should be considered in a lot of situations, but it will whiff against air dashing characters if they move over you. For situations like those, reacting with air throw is far more consistent. Anji's 5K is a pretty basic button. With decent startup, reach, and being fairly active, it's a pretty alright move. It is used as an alternative to his far slash. While Anji's far slash does go further, his 5K trades distance for being faster and safer. This move does look stupid and it doesn't look great, but trust me, it's actually decent. It has good cancel routes and go into a 6H and 2D. Anji's 2K is a basic low, short range and fast startup. It's kind of just what it is. It can combo into 2D for a hard knockdown and set up for his butterfly Okizeme. You can also use it as a fast check for some moves that can scan the floor quickly, like Soul's Grand Viper or Ino Stroke the Big Cock. Close Slash is Anji's bread and butter of everything, perhaps his most important normal. Close Slash is your preferred melee attack. If the opponent is recovering, Close Slash is active enough to beat out the opponent's wake-up throw attempt. Close Slash is also the most practical starter for most of his punishes. Most importantly, Close Slash has various Gatling options that allow you to frame trap the opponent well and can begin a lot of interesting pressure shenanigans. Close Slash cancels into 2S, Far S, 2H, and 5H. Canceling Close Slash into Far Slash or 2S is a true block stream, but you can delay it to purposely leave a gap that blows up the opponent's mashing or their jump, aka a frame trap. But let's say your opponent is playing scared on defense and you think they will not bother to mash and is willing just to block a bit. Close Slash is -2 on block. Now I said I won't go into frame data here, but just bear with me. -2 is still fast enough to play somewhat greedy with pressure, so if you know your opponent is going to respect your cancel routes from Close Slash, it opens up things like Close Slash into run up throw. Hell, you can even do Close Slash, run up, and then another Close Slash, and then delay 2S. Sometimes the opponents let down their guard when they realize that you're getting away with a lot of greedy offense. And if at any point any of these things hit, you can cancel into 5H and into Fujin. This is the core of Anji's offensive game plan. Close Slash is where the shit gets done as opposed to the common misconception that this character is about Fujin, which he isn't, and I'll go over why that's the case when I cover Fujin. Moving on, Far Slash is Anji's farthest reaching poke. It goes far, but has fairly long startup and even longer recovery. It's very easy to whip punish. While this Far Slash isn't like Maze or Ramlethal's by any means, it's a workable one, and it's even mandatory that you get comfortable at being good at using it in many matchups. Far Slash is Anji's most reliable way to whip punish the opponent. Far Slash can combo into Fujin on crouching opponents, or if it counter hits. You can also convert him to 5H if you're close enough. 2S is another one of Anji's low attacks. It hits both sides, but the applications where this is actually useful is pretty limited. It also lowers his hitbox considerably, so it can be used to low profile a few things, but he has a better button for that. Overall, 2S is mostly pressure fodder from his Close Slash. It does hit low, but it's mediocre as a poke and it doesn't go far. 5H is Anji's heavy slash. It hits both sides like his 2S, but the situations where this is useful is pretty niche. You can argue that it's a good anti-cross-up anti-air, but air throw is still better in that regard. 5H is also very slow overall to be used as an actual anti-air. However, 5H still finds use because of its fairly disjointed hitbox. It's a really good normal in some matchups where characters have to commit to approaching you. 5H is usually safe on block if you space it well, and on counter hit you can combo into charged Fujin. 5H is also good pressure fodder from his Close Slash and overall is useful for combos. 2H is Anji's dedicated frame trap tool. It's a terrible normal in the actual neutral game since it somehow manages to be even slower than 5H with no good real hitbox or hurtbox qualities. Close Slash to 2H is a natural frame trap and will beat out any opponent's mashing that isn't a super or dragon punch. Anji has pretty big rewards if he manages to successfully frame trap and counter hit the opponent with 2H. 2H is also very important in some of his combos and hit confirms. Close Slash into 2H combos on crouching opponents and can set up for more optimal combos than his Close Slash to 5H routes. Close Slash to 2H also combos on air hit or counter hit as well. If you can properly hit confirm into 2H, you can milk some pretty heavy damage, something to consider if you need yourself to optimize a little bit more. 6H is a forward moving attack that hits 3 times. All 3 hits cover different heights, allowing Anji to hit characters that are low profiling while also even anti-airing at times, although this move should not be used as an actual dedicated anti-air. 6H is a good option to apply further pressure as it can frame trap off of his 2P and 5P, or catches opponents jumping if they try to jump after blocking 2P or 5P. 6H is generally not great in a general neutral game other than to check random moves that may appear in the wild. Anji extends his hurtbox a lot while doing this move, and his horizontal hitbox only seems decent because Anji is moving forward a lot. Most big normals will end up stuffing him. 6H combos into Fujin on ground hit. On air hit, things behave a lot more strangely. In the corner, you can combo into Ko on airborne opponents, but most other times you're gambling with Fujin. The juggle state of the opponent is different based on if the final hit of 6H connects or not, and is pretty tricky to eyeball. 5D is Anji's dust. Like all dust in this game, it's an overhead. Uncharged version gets fairly mediocre reward without Roman cancels, but the charged version can cash out on some pretty huge damage if your opponent is not ready for it. Because of the general long startup of 5D, especially its charged version, you want to ideally set up in a way where you can't be interrupted. The easiest way to set up 5D is after you knock down your opponent, but another way also works, and it goes back to our old friend Close Slash. Close Slash can cancel into 5D as well. Close Slash to uncharged 5D is a pretty tight string by itself, but if you opt for charged 5D, you can get a pretty huge reward for something that can catch them off guard, especially if they're thinking about the other things that could result from Close Slash, such as you canceling into his low options like 2S or 2D, or doing dash up throw afterwards. Moving on, 2D is Anji's sweep. He literally just lies down when doing this move, and is his best move to low profile some attacks with. It's actually a pretty decent move overall as a regular button to use since it recovers reasonably fast and is generally difficult to punish. On successful hit, you can cancel to butterfly for Okizeme or OTG with Fujin and do the K follow up to chase for a meaty. If it hits close, Uncharged Ko will combo. If 2D counter hits, you can pick up the enemy with Close Slash if they're a light character or just combo to a special. Now let me cover air normals. Anji's JP is a rapid fireball air jab. It's decent air to air, but it also has a decent hitbox and can randomly hit opponents on the ground. Do note that Anji's JP is actually slower than his JS and his JK, but it's still good to just get some free hits if you find the opportunity to do so. Otherwise, this move is mostly whatever. You kinda just throw it out in the air if you don't know where your opponent is or what they may do, and it may randomly bop them if they try to meet you in the air. It's also your best measure to somewhat prevent your opponents from approaching in an angle to air throw you. Anji's JK is a straight air kick, and it's fairly active. This is Anji's fastest air normal and it's a serviceable air to air. JK can combo into JD, and JD wall bounces, so you can actually pick them up from the ground if you're ready for that kind of conversion, but there's a lot of factors for it being consistent. Otherwise, just mostly use it as a basic air to air check and is also a decent air to ground attack. Anji's JS is a weird looking fan move and is, in my opinion, his most versatile and his overall best air normal. He curves his sexy body in a way that actually flattens his hurtbox, making it fairly evasive as far as air moves go. This move could be a lot of things clean out and is good at protecting himself while also reaching far and low enough to work as a good air to air and also a good air to ground. It's also air dash cancelable, but JS is far worse than JK for juggle purposes because JS doesn't float the opponent high in the way that JK does. This move is best done when you're falling and the opponent is trying to position themselves close to you. It's also good normal to use when air dashing backwards. Anji's JH is his best air to ground normal for its hitbox. It's overall his best air normal to come at your opponents if you air dash towards them. If you also find yourself jumping to avoid a throw, this move is also your best move to counter hit your opponent's whipped throw attempt. Anji's JH has a decent hitbox, but it also has an Achilles heel in Strive. Strive adds a few frames of landing recovery when you do air actions such as attacking or air dashing, or double jumping. If the opponent blocks a relatively high up JH, you're vulnerable to throws if you try to attack afterwards. You can backdash afterwards to bait it, but sometimes it's actually a punish and you just cannot do much. If you air dash with JH and if you're unsure it's going to hit, it's best to try to delay it a bit and try to get a deeper version of JH so you can continue your turn without the threat of your opponent throwing you. JH's hitbox can also cross up, but Anji is not Giovanna and isn't centered heavily around trying to position himself over his opponents for a cross up. Lastly, on air hit, Anji's JH will spike the opponent on the ground even if it's a counter hit and you can't actually get it confirmed. You can run up and start your pressure at least, but if you want the raw JH to be meaningful on air-to-air situations that occur randomly, you have to red RC. Anji's JD is a weird button to say the least. He brings out his umbrella and pops it. The first thing to notice about this move is that it shifts Anji's air momentum, which is deceptively powerful. In situations where the enemy is moving underneath you and trying to predict where you're falling, Anji's JD can quickly change that. If Anji is around super jump height, he could fall down with an attack. JK is often the best normal to use for this due to his active frames and overall solid hitbox. But JS can also work at slightly higher heights. JP generally isn't useful due to the very little hit stun or block stun, and JH is often too slow to come out unless you're very high. JD also has a fairly deceptive powerful hitbox and can hit fairly high above him and low below him. This makes this move decent for trading with things like Chip J2K. If the opponent air dashes, they're likely to run into it. Last and not least, JD can wall bounce if the opponent hits the wall as they fly from the hit. JD is important in some of Anji's combos and combo conversions. Random JD that wall bounces can also be converted into pretty strong combos as well. Anji's throw and back throw are fairly equivalent. Throws are a core part of Anji's toolkit, and for some reason in Strive they do a lot of damage. Throw often because it sets up Anji's other powerful pressure options. Anji's air throw is a very important part of his toolkit as well. Anji's 6P is a decent anti-air, but it often only works when the opponent is directly rushing you down. Anji's air throw on the other hand is not only faster than 6P in terms of overall startup, but it covers a lot of area. Being good at air throwing is an art in itself, and I recommend you trying to get good at it as some things are best punished with air throw. Plus, it allows you to better chase some characters who intend to get out of the corner, and we can't just allow people to do that now, can we? Overall, I hope this video was helpful in having you understand how to utilize Anji's normals in a neutral game and for pressure. Next video is going to cover his guard point mechanics, specials, supers, and some gameplay goals. It should come out fairly soon. Like, subscribe, comment, and all that YouTube algorithm jazz is highly appreciated. Anyways, take care.